Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to our inspiration session for the Relove Fashion competition. My name is Arran Murphy. I'm the program manager of Rediscovery Fashion, and we're going to be joined by Duffy, sustainable designer, who's also going to be one of our guest judges this year. So we're really excited to have her on board. Um, First of all, what I'm going to do is talk through just an overview of the competition, just to make sure everyone's kind of knows what's going on with it. Um, we're getting really excited about it. We've had loads of interest and loads of registrations so far. So we're really looking forward to seeing what happens and seeing the entries as they come in. The submission deadline is the 13th of January, so you've got loads of time to work on all the aspects of your entries. And then there'll be, after the 13th of January, there'll be a shortlisting process and we'll have the final in early March. So yeah, it's kind of all getting going. But really glad that you've been able to join us for the inspiration session today. We're hoping to give you a few ideas and tips and techniques that will get you started with your entry. So just to give an overview of the entry, obviously it includes your outfit that you create, and the outfit should be wearable. It should be using repurposed and reusing and reimagined items of clothing that already exist or textiles. And you can source these from your home, from your own wardrobe, things that you're no longer wearing anymore. You can get them from friends and family, and you can also go on a thrifting expedition to charity shops. So anything that has been pre-loved or used before is a potential source of fabric for your outfits. So you have your outfit, and then that's obviously the main event of your entry. But we also ask for kind of supporting documents that will give the judges an insight into how you actually created your outfit. So one thing that is really important is to document everything with photographs. So even if if you're kind of gathering fabrics or materials or clothes to use that you might use for your outfit, it's just really important to take a little photograph along the way so that we have an idea of where things started from and what they've been amazingly transformed into. So that's what the storyboard is all about. So we do ask for a storyboard, and it really is, it's more than just a mood board. So we do want to see also where you're getting your inspiration from, and what kind of what your style might be. But it's a little bit, the storyboard is a little bit more than that. It is actually telling the story of your outfit from start to finish. So that is the reason we ask for that, is so that we, the judges, can get a sense of the journey that you've taken with your outfit. And if you've explored any techniques, or if you've learned any new techniques, we really want to know about that as well, because that's, the Relove Fashion competition is a platform to do that, to explore and learn new techniques for upcycling and repurposing clothing, and that you'll be able to use for your own clothes then going on, So if you have, there's just a note there, if you have any questions during the session, if you want to type them into the chat, and then I'll be able to see them and I'll be able to answer them for you. So another thing is the video. So the, sorry, would you mind, just the screen has gone a little bit dark there. Thank you. So yeah, the video. So this again is a supporting thing. It's not a major thing. It's an informal video. If you want to have a look at our last information session, there's a kind of sample, an example of what that should be. Again, it's just giving us an insight into the techniques you used and anything that you're particularly proud of, just to give the judges a sense of your journey, basically. So then we have there's a research element that we'd like you to do, and that can be really interesting as well, because it can really help you have an insight into the fashion industry, and kind of give you ideas about how it might be improved, because it's a really important issue these days. But yeah, the outfit is the main event, really. So when it comes to the outfit, the judges are looking at the wearability, the style and creativity, the sourcing of materials, the skills used, and the innovation. So it's really important to remember that you don't need to be a brilliant tailor, or you don't need to have amazing crocheting skills to create your outfit. What we're looking for is experimentation and innovation, as well as skills used. So this is really kind of reflected in the category, the winning categories. So we have best evening, best casual, best tailoring, best innovation, and best research is a new category that we've added in this year. So there's different ways that your outfit may shine towards the judges. So if you're learning things, like last year there was finalists who'd learned to sew for the competition and they got into the finals. So, you know, don't let whatever your skill level is put you off. It's all for the taking. So just to talk a little bit then about inspiration, which can come from anywhere really. But if you're having trouble finding a starting point, it can come from loads of different avenues. So you might decide that you actually like a particular type of style or a particular type of outfit, and you want to create a version of that. And then you can go looking for fabrics that might work for that outfit. Another way, the starting point could be actually gathering for unwanted items of clothing and what inspiration you might get from actually those pieces. And that's a very kind of circular way to look at it, circular design kind of thinking. So you're working from what you have and letting what you have inspire what you will make. That's kind of an organic design process, I guess, because you're kind of going on a journey with the fabrics that you have. Another thing you could do would be, if you have an item of clothing that actually needs a bit of a mend or a bit of a stitch, you could actually kind of explore visible mending techniques and use the mending as your starting point, or one of the design features of your outfit. So really, yeah, it can come from anywhere. You can decide that you want to rework one piece and alter the shape of one piece. Yeah, it can really come from anywhere. And you might find that if you go, like, your design process kind of develops as you go along. So you might start from one place and end up somewhere completely different. So that's kind of the beauty of exploring and allowing yourself kind of make mistakes with things, that you kind of going on a journey. You're not sure exactly where you'll get to. The next thing I wanted to talk about was just, if you have items of clothing, the deconstruction of them is quite important. So if you're careful about the deconstruction, you can really minimize the amount of waste you create, and also you can maximize the way that you're able to reuse your items of clothing. So I have a few examples in the background here, and I've kind of gone through a few of them before, but it is the idea of using, you know, the waist of a pair of jeans as the bottom of a jacket. So using finished elements and cutting them up in such a way that you're maximizing the potential reuse. So even if it is that you are harvesting fabric from a big skirt or something like that, that you're actually putting your pattern pieces, creating a new outfit or item of clothing entirely, but using the fabric from an old item of clothing. The placement of your pattern pieces and where you cut them out from will, like, if you cut out a small piece from the very center, you're going to stop the rest of it being able to be used. And then there's that idea also of using finished elements as design features. So for example, in this t-shirt shirt combination, you can see the collar has been used as a finished element. Also, you can transfer pockets on from one piece to another piece, that kind of thing. What else was I going to go through with you? Patchworking, yes. So when you're cutting up pieces, you might end up with small scraps, and a really good thing to do with that is to patchwork them into actual lengths of fabric that you can use possibly as a design feature down the center of a t-shirt or something like that, or an add-on, you know, something that you sew on top as a design feature. This again is an example of that. So with various small scraps of jeans, all patchworked together to create this length that actually, you know, a sleeve could be made out of, it could be incorporated into a top. You can see the top that I'm actually wearing is 3 jumpers put together, so different finished elements from 3 different jumpers patchworked together. So I've used the bottom of one and then the shoulder and arms of another one, and then created the collar from just a strip actually of a different one. So combining different items of clothing together can be really fun as well. And then actually, you know, looking at different textiles from around the house and looking at items of clothing and changing the context of them almost. So there's an example of that with this shirt where the collar is used for the sleeve, the button placket is used for the neckline. So it's kind of being turned on its side and different elements have been used for different functions. Also, I was going to talk about there the reworking and reimagining. Okay, lost my train of thought for a second, but I wanted to, this thing, which is kind of a really fun piece. It's using old bed sheets, so I've kind of used the finish element of the elastic down the bottom, and done a bit of gathering at the top and created a really fun kind of pannier skirt thing. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea that I'm trying to communicate there, is that you can have loads of fun exploring different techniques. And also one thing to remember is that you can always undo what you've done. So this tool, the stitch ripper, is a very important tool in any kind of textile creating and repurposing, because you're using it to take apart seam lines as well as any stitch lines that you've done that you're not too happy with. So that is my brief kind of overview of inspiration and a few different techniques. And I'm really excited now to take in to ask Aisling to join us. We just have one question actually. So can you patchwork any fabrics together? Do they have to be the same type? So this is something that you can explore, and different fabrics will act differently together. Generally, you know, if you're using a similar weighted fabric, you can kind of predict how it will act or how they'll sew together. I try and stay away from sewing a stretch and a non-stretch fabric together, because that can be a bit difficult. Although worth exploring also, because you might actually like the way that it sews together. So I would love to bring in Aisling at this point, because I'm really excited that she's joining us today. She's a really talented sustainable fashion designer, and it's just brilliant that she's involved with the competition this year. Aisling, are you there?
Hi.
How's it going? How are you?
Good.
Thanks
Hi,
a
Arran.
million for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
really excited to be a guest judge this year, and I can't wait to see all the different entries. And yeah, it's great.
Yeah. We have lots of budding designers online with us today, and I was hoping that you would give us a little bit of a background into how you got into sustainable fashion and what kind of what's important in it for you.
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know me, maybe I'll give a little background about myself and
Brilliant.
what I do. So I started off. I studied in Dublin at the National College of Art and Design, and my background is in textiles. So I don't actually come from a fashion background. I learned how to create different types of fabrics, printed fabrics, embellished fabrics. I then worked in London for a good few years designing fabrics for fashion companies. And then I decided I wanted to start my own business. I was always creating on the side, always making stuff just for myself to wear. And it was a real kind of goal or kind of dream of mine to have my own brand. So I spent some time learning how to sew. I think probably around 8 months in total. I went from not knowing how to sew to being quite comfortable, I would say, in sewing. This is my sewing machine behind me here. It's an industrial sewing machine. Um, and for me, when I wanted to start, so I have a small fashion business where I create a lot of one of a kind handmade pieces. And what's really important to me is that it's made sustainably or as sustainably as possible. So for me, I think, I've always shopped in charity shops. I've always loved being able to find something that maybe someone else doesn't have. And also the idea of um, something that already has a story and that you're kind of adding to that story. I really liked that. And I think working in the fashion industry, it became apparent to me how destructive it was, and just how I didn't want to be part of that. I loved fashion, but I just didn't want to add to, any more environmental damage. So I wanted to create a brand, doing what I love, following my passion, but also doing it in a way where I'm the least destructive. So for me, that involved using fabrics that already have had a life. Um, or upcycling fabrics, and that's a really, really important part of what I do.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. So inspiring to hear that you actually learned in that short space of time as well, the sewing skills. That's kind of a
Absolutely. And I
thing.
wouldn't say I'm an expert sewer in any way. I just about get by, and I think the more you do it, the more you learn, and the more you find things that you're comfortable with doing and that work for you. Yeah. But I think for anyone, if you work and practice, you'll pick it up in a few months, no problem. Yeah.
Brilliant. Inspiring. Would you mind talking us through then your design process a little bit? Like, where do you source your fabrics from, and what are you looking for when you're choosing what you're going to use?
Yeah. So for me, if I talk about where I source my fabrics first, I think a lot of people are kind of interested, and that's a question I get a lot, is like, where can I find fabrics? And I think just be really simple about it. Um, First, have a look around your house, have a look at your clothes, your wardrobe. What are you not wearing that could be used again? Um, I use a lot of sequins in my work, and I don't buy like new sequins. I will find, say, if you go into a charity shop and there's a sequin dress, you can buy that and you can learn, or as you were talking about before, deconstruct it carefully, and you can get, a few meters of fabric from that. And I source a lot that way. I love car boot sales. There's not that many on anymore, but that's a great way of sourcing. Different kind of vintage flea markets, charity shops is a great one. I use eBay a good bit, Depop. So just those kind of, start small, but there are definitely different avenues, and you don't have to spend a lot of money either. I would recommend starting with what you already have in your home, and that's also the most sustainable thing too. And
Brilliant, brilliant. And then once you've chosen, like, just your own design process then. So
okay,
once
yeah.
you've chosen fabrics, how do you decide what's going to go together, or
Mhm.
what elements do you tend to use?
So for me, like similar to you there, I have shelves of fabrics that I found. So I'm a very visual person. I have to kind of see things to know what I want to do. So when I'm starting the process of designing a collection, I will have a color palette in mind, and I will kind of look to the fabrics I have and pull out different fabrics that I think will match in with that color palette. If I don't have fabrics that are the right color, you can dye them. I do that a lot. You can buy machine dyes, or you could, I don't know, you can dye in the pots, whatever is easiest. But sometimes that's an interesting way of transforming a fabric that already exists. Um, so I start there. I pull my fabrics together. So maybe I have, 6 different fabrics that I'm going to use in a collection. And then for me, the silhouettes or the shapes throughout my collections, I'll bring in new things each time, but generally they're the same. So I'll start with my pattern pieces, which are the like the building blocks of making a dress or a skirt or whatever it is, and I'll cut out the fabric. And then for me, because I come from a textile background, I'm still really, really interested in like creating, like the textiles are a very important part of my work. So I spend a lot of time reworking the fabrics, either by printing them, painting on them. I do a lot of embellishment, patchwork. I know you're talking about patchwork there. I love patchwork. It's a big part of what I do. And then so that's like an extra little step that I do in between the cutting of the fabric and then the construction of the garment. So yeah, that's kind of in general my design process when I'm working on a collection.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. And you're working on a new collection. You've been working on a new collection that's in Omdiva at the moment and will be online shortly. And that's really interesting what you're talking about, treating the fabrics before you actually reuse them. So reimagining them in some way. That's really interesting because you could do that with a bed sheet essentially, couldn't you? And create a really new looking and exciting fabric from a really plain starting point.
Absolutely. You need to that's why I think when you're talking about like spending time developing techniques, that's like I spend a lot of time developing what I see as my kind of, I don't know, signature or visual language for what I do. So I think, yeah, if you can kind of explore and create these new techniques, you can create something so different from something as simple as a bed sheet. Definitely.
Brilliant. That's great, and we'd love to see actually some examples of your work. Some examples. You have a few signature techniques. So you mentioned the patchworking, and the kind of printing. So I think you have some examples there to show us. Yeah.
That's right. So I'm gonna turn you around, and I have a rail of pieces from different collections that I'm going to talk you through. And then I'll show you one or two techniques and just as little examples of inspiration. So if you just bear with me a sec, I'll just turn you around.
Brilliant. Thank you. Exciting.
So let me know if that's okay. Maybe I might move you a little bit this way.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
That's great. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Perfect. That's brilliant.
So this is a rail of different pieces from previous collections. I'll show you a few pieces and I'll show you some examples of different processes that I use. And then I've done a little mock-up of ways that you could try that yourself. So just as little examples, this dress here, which was from my spring summer collection, that's used, there's toweling in this that I've reprinted, redyed. So if you have towels lying around your house, that could be a good idea. I make a lot of little collars. Again, this is a tulle skirt that has been chopped up and used here, and then fabrics that I've printed on top of. Again, an example of patchworking. I talked a little bit about sequins, and here's an example of sequins from an old dress, that I chopped up and added in. So you can create all sorts of things, chopping up, again, patchworking. What else do we have? I do a good bit of embellishment. So again, using found sequins and embellishing into the fabrics again. I think that can be quite time consuming, but you might find that you really enjoy it and it's something you can do when you're watching TV or something like that. An example of another patchworked dress, and also a technique that I'm going to show you that I use a lot is like gathering fabrics. So I use this a lot in, say, in the sleeves. It's gathered, and that's how you can create a lot of volume. And I think throughout my collections, I like to create pieces that have volume and kind of flow, and that's a big part of what I do. Another example I thought might be interesting for you is this is a found jacket that I made for a musician, and I hand painted it. And this is just acrylics. You don't need to, I'm sure you have acrylics lying around. So that's another idea of how to upcycle.
Gorgeous.
And this is another piece that I made, and these are all found brooches that I've used to create like a really kind of heavy piece. But yeah, it could be an idea for, I was thinking everyone has buttons lying around. You could do something similar with buttons. It's great use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then patchwork. It's an example of a patchwork skirt, and this skirt was made from the offcuts from a collection I'd already made. So I know you were talking about, and this is also an example of, I think you had a question about mixing different types of fabric for patchwork. This is a mix. I think you do have to be careful when you're mixing stretch with kind of non-stretch fabrics, but you can get interesting results. Yeah, but what I'm going to show you guys is, so throughout my collections, I do these big gathered sleeves. And the way I do that is you have long bits of fabric and then you use something to gather it all together. So I have two ways of doing that I'm going to show you. So will I just jump into that now? Is that okay?
There's just one question before you do jump into that.
Yeah.
It's kind of about for the competition, I guess, and it's asking,
Sure.
can you make your dress out of other materials, such as paper mache or tin foil? So that's from Emmy. And what I would like to say to that is, we're really into exploring different techniques and exploring different reuse elements. It's really important that the clothing is wearable. And that it's not created just for this competition. And I think it's different from other competitions in that way, possibly. So tinfoil, you'd have to do your own experiment, but I would not say that it would last through a wash. Likewise, paper mache wouldn't really last through a wash. But having said that, like, some people add feathers to outfits, and you have to remove them before you wash them, and that's part of their care instructions. So if it was something like that, then it would be okay. But it is important to keep in mind that the outfits do need to be wearable. So that hopefully answers your question. If there are any other questions as you are going through your process and creating your entries, you can email us at info@rediscoverycentre.ie, and we'll address all your questions via email. There's a lot of information on our website as well about Relove Fashion, relovefashion.ie. And also we have all of our kind of social media channels as well. So just to put that in there. So yeah, Aisling, if you would be so kind as to show us these techniques that potentially people might use, but are such an important feature of your amazing work.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to show you as well quickly. I know I said I don't have any of my new collection because I haven't made one for online. I made a full autumn winter collection that's in my stockist in Dublin on Diva at the moment. But I have one piece that was a sample from that collection, and these are these little ruched skirts that feature these like little patchwork details, patches. And also that's a great idea for if you have a fabric with a little bit of a rip, you can put a patch over it, make a feature of it. But this is also shows what I'm going to go through with you now, which is this idea of creating volume using the technique I'm going to show you, and then big bows at the end. I have a lot of bows throughout my collections. So I have everything kind of prepared, and I'm not going to sew, but I'll show you what you would do. So say if you're starting off with a big piece of fabric that you're going to gather, you've got your piece of fabric, and then what you do is you just fold it over. So you've got your fold, and then you'd run a stitch along here so that it's closed and it's like a channel. So I have a piece here that I've made, a long piece, and you can see there is a channel in the middle. I hope that makes sense to everyone. And then what you do is you get whatever string or ribbon that you're going to use to create the bow with. So I have a blue piece just so we can all see the difference. And what you do is you put a safety pin. You can also use clips. I put a safety pin on both sides. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed the ribbon in through the channel. Okay, so here we go. We go all the way. It'll take a minute, and then you can start to pull that through. It's all a very simple way, but you can use this in lots of ways. I use it across here, or I use it at the end of sleeves to create that kind of puff detail. But you could experiment and put it in other places. There's millions of ways that it could be used. So we'll get it through to the end.
There's one thing you need. If I've done something like that, sometimes I've pulled the ribbon the whole way through.
Yes, so that's why I have a pin at the end, so you could pin it on the other side. So you end
brilliant! Yeah, it's a great idea.
But I've done that many a time myself. Anyway, so the basic, that's a kind of a basic example of that. You would then pull the fabric, and you could use lengths and lengths of fabric to get more and more volume. But there, I hope that makes sense. And then you would tie a little bow at the end there. Does that make sense? This is also the way you'd make a scrunchie, by the way. If you wanted to do scrunchie, you'd use elastic in the middle there. So that's one technique. And then the other way that I create that kind of volume or ruching is like a smocking technique. So what you do is you have your long piece of fabric. I've kind of pre-done this, and with your sewing machine you run a really wide stitch along. Okay, so like a really wide stitch is what you need, and it's a good idea that you lock the stitch at the start, so kind of do a few back and forth stitches just to hold that in place. And then what you do is at the end you take the two top strings or the two bottom strings. You don't have to do 2 rows, you can just do 1, but you get a kind of a nicer, fuller gather if you do the 2. And what you do is you just very gently feed that down, down, down. And the more you go, the more volume you get. But I think that kind of shows an example there of you get these really gorgeous little ruffles. And then what you could do is you could have that there, or like at the end of a skirt, or a little feature up on the shoulder. And yeah, again, there's millions of ideas that you could do that, but maybe that's a little an inspiration, or will kind of get you thinking of what you could do.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, that can be used for any fabric, really, can't it? It can be used for a stretch.
Definitely. And I'd encourage people to experiment. You might get a result that's different than what you expected, but that might be even more interesting. So I think that idea of experimenting with different fabrics and different techniques is where you're going to actually discover something, you know?
Yeah, that's where the kind of exciting kind of things happen, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that's brilliant. Thanks so much, Aisling. And so just to mention, your website is Aisling Duffy shop. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's aislingduffy .shop, and if you use Instagram, I'm at Aisling Duffy Studio, and that's kind of my most up to date. I do a lot of behind the scenes and my stories and everything like that. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. So yeah, everyone should definitely check that out. Do you have any other designers that you think are brilliant sustainable designers that you would like to share with everyone?
Yeah, for me, when I discovered these designers, I found them really, really inspiring, and an example of people doing it at the very top, that they're showing at Paris Fashion Week and London Fashion Week and selling like in really high end shops. So I've 2 examples, and I will spell it out for you as well. I'll type it into the chat so that everyone knows. But there's a Paris-based designer called Marine Sayre, and she is doing incredible work. She's working at like I work at a very small scale. She's working at a huge, large scale. She does stuff like buys bulk old denim, unused denim that's about to go to landfill, and she'll use all sorts of really interesting techniques to regenerate the fabric and create these incredible things from it. She regenerates leathers, wools, old t-shirts. So, and she also on YouTube has a lot of kind of behind the scenes show. So it's a really good example for showing like that it is being done on that really high end luxury level. So that's someone that I'd recommend. I'd also recommend Chapova Luena, who is a London based duo designer, and their work is incredible. It's really, really fun. It's all about dress up, layering, a lot of clashing print, and a lot of really interesting techniques. And again, they're using a lot of reclaimed fabrics, reclaimed brooches and embroidery bits, and just a really, really kind of exciting insight into where the fashion industry might be going in terms of sustainability. So there are two I'd recommend, and I'll type them in now so that we can have the correct spelling.
Brilliant. Thanks a million for that. Yeah, they sound really brilliant to have a look at. So I suppose, yeah, just experimentation, I guess, is the kind of main thing that we're kind of getting to here, is to just explore and use this opportunity really to explore and learn new techniques. And we'd love to see that journey in your entries and in your storyboard and in your videos. We'd love to hear all about them. And also, if you have any questions, you can send them on to us. One thing that we kind of touched on was the not kind of trying to reduce the waste that you're creating during your process. So I have a really good tip for you. We have here a draft excluder, and so that can be made. This is made from two bits. It's just two rectangles of jeans, or you can make that from anything at all. I guess a heavier fabric is better, but what we're filling it with and what we're doing here in the studio is we're filling it with all our small scraps of fabric, and that's a really good thing to do for lots of reasons. So you're actually creating something with your waste. I think that about. Does anyone have any more questions for either of us? Maybe for Aisling about her amazing creations. If you do, you can type them into the chat. Aisling, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think maybe it might be worth talking a little bit about inspiration. I know you mentioned for people's entries, inspiration is important, and just not to get like overwhelmed by the idea of needing like an exact thing to be inspired by. Like I was thinking about this for my work. There's a theme that runs through it, and that theme is like an interest in music and music culture and the things I would want to be wearing going to rock concerts or whatever it was. So like that's a big theme of my work, and that carries through. But it could be really simple, like if you like to take your dog for a walk on a beach, like think about what's on the beach. The sea, is there any like poetry inspired by the sea, or like the sand, what are techniques that you could experiment with sand, or the shape of a shell. Inspiration can come from anywhere, and what I find important anyway is that it's meaningful to you. That kind of drives creation a little bit more when it's something that is kind of meaningful to you. I hope that's in some way helpful, but just to kind of think about like, what do you enjoy? What are you passionate about? And maybe getting inspiration from that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Brilliant to share that. It was one thing when you were speaking, I was thinking about actually the stories of clothing, and that idea that when you're reusing something, it already has a story. But when you're kind of working it into a new piece, you're creating a whole new story, and you're combining different stories in a whole new way. And that can be really exciting and create this whole new kind of expression, and that also is something to kind of get into, is that idea that if you're making something for yourself and repurposing it, you can do it in a way that that you're really happy with, and it's kind of a little intervention into the fashion industry and into the seasons and everything, the fashion seasons, that you're actually deciding for yourself what you are comfortable in and what you like wearing, and what story you want to tell through your clothing. So it's a really good, exciting thing to get into, I think, in terms of self-expression.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is it from us. Sorry, you were going to add something, Aisling, were you?
Oh, I was just going to say, I really like the idea of when you're working with fabrics that have had a previous life, that you are adding to the story, and that they do have a story. If you find something like an old pair of curtains, I love thinking about, like, where were those curtains beforehand, and then they're having an entire new life instead of going into landfill. And I think that's a really, really special part of working in the kind of sustainable side of fashion. So that's another really good reason why people should be passionate about it.
Yeah, and there's that story, and then there's the whole actual story of the production of all of these items that will be released. And it's kind of honoring all of the work that's already gone into them by reusing them and doing great things for the environment by extending the lifespan and extending the reuse and keeping them out of landfill, which is ultimately what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, Aisling, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you on board with the competition, and really excited to have you as a guest judge. The final in March is going to be really exciting. We'll have all the finalists' outfits on display as part of an exhibition here in the Rediscovery. So it really is a great event. And it's just, the best part is actually seeing all of your creations, all of the entries coming in. It's just so exciting. So really glad to have you with us for that part of things. Sorry, there's another question. Are there any other fellow the question there is, are there any other fellow sustainable designers worth checking out that haven't already been mentioned?
In terms of Irish design, Leisha Carey is doing incredible work. I might just write in her name. I think she's definitely worth checking out. She's very, very skilled as well. She comes from a fashion background, so her work is absolutely beautiful. So I'd really, really recommend her. I'll type her in here. And I think she has work in Omdiva as well. So if you are in Dublin, you can definitely go in and see some of her work there too. Yeah. And also just Omdiva in general, if you are in town, they have all new graduate work from NCAD, and a lot of designers are working in that sustainable realm. So that might be a really good, if you're in town, or even take a trip into town to Omdiva and go and see all the collections there, because there's some really interesting new sustainable Irish designers. So yeah, that would definitely be a recommendation from me there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Aisling. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you all for joining us. And if you have any more questions, you can email us at info@rediscoverycentre.ie, or check out as well our Relove Fashion website. And thank you so much.
Great.
Bye.
Look forward to seeing all the entries. Bye. Bye.
Likewise.